Hello everyone, hope you're all safe and sound at home. So after we finished chapter 17, the human immune system, we're moving to chapter 18, the animal behavior. So what's a behavior in general? It is the way an organism responds to a change, whether this change comes from the internal environment or the external environment. A behavior could be innate or it could be learned. Innate meaning it's inborn, something that you're born with, such as running for shelter upon hearing a loud noise for different animals. It can also be learned, such as one child sharing her toys with another child. So behavior can be innate or learned. Behaviors are carried out in response to a stimulus. The behavior is a response to a stimulus. Anyways, this is all you need to know. So the behavior is a response to a stimulus. It's important. Why are behaviors important in general? Because it ensures the survival and successful production of offspring. So the study which shows the way behavior and its relationship is involved in the evolutionary origins is called ethology. There are the three non-scientists in the field of ethology, which are Carl von Frisch, I guess, Konrad Lorenz, and Nico Tinbergen. Okay? Frisch is known for his extensive studies in honeybee communication. Nico is known for the elucidation of the fixed action patterns, which we are going to be talking about in a minute. And Lorenz is famous for his work on imprinting. So let's start. The fixed action pattern, what is it? It's an innate, highly stereotypical behavior. Once it is started, it will not stop. It will continue no matter how insane it is. And it is usually initiated by an external stimuli which makes that organism undergo the fixed action pattern. When these stimuli are exchanged between members of the same species, they are known as releasers. For example, Tinbergen so the experiment was on stickleback fish. Stickleback fish, we've got the males of stickleback fish which attack other males that invade its territory. How do they know that it's another male? There's a releaser. This releaser is the color red on the belly of the intruder. So let's say I put a stick or a wooden model and then I color it red at the bottom. Once the stickleback fish male sees that wooden block with the red bottom, once it sees the color red, it will start attacking the wooden block, no matter how stupid the idea is. So this is what's known as a fixed action pattern. Now we move on to the learning, which has to do with the brain and the lifespan of the individual. So let's say if we talk about which animal has a short lifespan, the fruit fly. So it has no time to learn. Basically, it just wants to feed itself and multiply. So it has no time to learn. No matter how complex the brain is, it will never learn anything. But if we move on to human beings, our human brain is pretty complex, and we've got a lifespan of around 70 years, I think. So we've got time to learn. So it's dependent on prior experience and learning. Move on to the next page. We've got habituation, which is one of the simplest forms of learning, in which an animal comes to ignore a persistent stimulus. So let's say you start tapping on the aquarium of fish. First of all, it moves back, then it ignores your tapping. Over here in the book, they gave you the example of a Hydra. A Hydra shrinks when there's a tap, when there's a sound. So let's say you tapped on this dish. It will quickly shrink and become immobile. To what? To protect itself. But if you keep on tapping, it will no longer care about the tapping and move on with the normal life. So we say it has become habituated or used to the stimulus. We move on to the associative learning, where one stimulus is linked to another through experience. We've got two here. We've got the classical conditioning and the operant conditioning. In the classical conditioning, we've got the experiments of Ivan Pavlov. I'm sure you've heard about him, especially in psychology. This lesson should be interesting for Farah. So Pavlov, what he did actually is he taught dogs, they usually salivate when they see food. But Pavlov linked the ringing of a bell to the salivation. So every time he put food, he would ring the bell. After a period of time, whenever he rang the bell, the dogs would salivate even if there is no food present. We go to operant conditioning, which is known as the trial and error learning. When an animal learns to associate one of its own behaviors with a reward or a punishment that repeats, and then it either repeats or avoids that behavior. We've got B.F. Skinner in here, and he's the one who dealt with the rats. He placed a rat in a cage containing a lever that released a pellet of food. So the rat would depress the lever and the food would fall down. After a while, he learned that he associated the lever to food, and it would depress the lever at will. So when the rat is hungry, he would depress the lever and food would fall down. So such systems of rewards and punishment are the basis of most animal training. We move to imprinting. We finished with the associative learning here. We're moving to a third type or fourth type. I think it's the third type of learning. The imprinting occurs at a very sensitive and critical period of life, in the early life of an individual. You know how ducklings follow their mom, or how chicks follow the chickens? Yeah, this occurs because of imprinting, the mother-offspring bonding in animals. And this is very important to allow the survival of the animal, because the mother would take care of the child and teach him, would take care of the baby or of the offspring and would teach him how to respond to specific stuff in the environment. So we've got experiments carried by Lawrence with geese. Geese hatchlings will follow the first thing they see that moves. So what did he do? He waited until they were hatching and he stood in front of them and started moving. Every single duckling or hatchling in such case started following him, so they became imprinted on the scientist. We move on to social behavior. When we talk about social behavior, we're talking about interactions between two or more animals. The social behaviors are the cooperation, agonistic dominance, and territoriality and altruism. Cooperation, just as the name suggests, we need more than one individual, or the presence of more than one individual would. So back to cooperation. And the cooperation, the result of the behavior would be better if done by more than one person. For example, hunting with lions or wild dogs. They hunt in packs. As a result, this enables them to bring down an animal larger than an individual could ever bring down alone. Agonistic behavior is aggressive behavior between. So let's say that we move on to agonistic behavior or aggressive behavior. It usually has to do with threats and actual combat to settle disputes between individuals. Okay, the disputes could be over food, over mates, or over shelter. So we've got real aggressive behavior, as well as ritualistic or symbolic behavior. For example, so they don't have to kill each other, but they could like show each other who is stronger. Let's say dogs. So a dog actually shows aggression by baring its teeth and erecting its ears and hair. So if the opponent got scared, he would show a submissive behavior that says, "You win, I give up." Examples of submissive behaviors are looking down or away from the winner. Okay? Once two individuals have settled a dispute and established their relationship by agonistic behavior, future encounters between them usually do not involve combat or posturing. We go to dominance, and it means whoever has the higher order can ordered around the lower social classes. So basically this has to do with the social classes. Over here we've got the alpha and the beta and then everyone else, which mean wolves in general. So the top rank, the next in line, the beta animal, controls all others except the alpha animal. Each animal threatens all animals beneath it in the pecking order. The top-ranked animal is assured of first choice of any resource, including food after a kill, the best territory, or the most fit mate. Territoriality, it's an area an organism defends and from which other members of the community are excluded. So the animal establishes and defends this area or this territory through agonistic behavior. We move on to altruism, where one individual reproductive fitness is reduced to increase the fitness of the group or the family. So we've got a person or an animal which sacrifices itself for the rest of the group or family. For example, the honeybee. Let's say there's an attack on the hive. So we've got a worker honeybee would sting the intruder and die, because you know whenever a honeybee stings someone, it loses its stinger and dies. So it dies, however, it increases the fitness of the queen bee that lays the eggs. Deal? How does it move on? Through kin selection. So the kin are selected as the recipients of the altruistic behavior. They are saved and can pass on their genes. Altruism evolved because it increases the number of copies of a gene common to a related group. So how do we have the questions in such a chapter? So for example, over here they're asking you to choose from the list of scientists. Okay? Describe the waggle dance in honeybees. Who was the one who had to do with the honeybees? Imprinting. Who did the imprinting? The one with the geese. Trained dogs to salivate at the sound of bell. I like this. Pavlov. Classical conditioning. Who did the studies about classical conditioning? And so on, okay? So your homework would be to do the exercises. Stay at home and stay safe, please, people. And Nazik, I used a pencil this time. I remembered you don't like writing on books with pens. Stay home, stay safe.